Hey, everybody, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited to be in the space and to make space for some necessary conversations around key issues that impact the Lansing community. And so, again, I want to just give you kudos and thank you for being and marking your calendars for being here. We want you to be present, be active. We're going to have some breakout sessions, and we want to welcome those that are joining us online on our Facebook pages. And so, as we're letting people in the room, we want you to introduce yourself in the comment section as we're letting folks in the room. And those of you that are online, if you can jump into this conversation so that your voice can be heard, would be absolutely appreciated. Again, my name is Sean Holland, aka Mordecai. I will be your host, and I will be also joined by Angela Waters Austin. We host these Lansing People's Assemblies together. We have been doing these for almost a year and a half. We started in 2020, and so again, we've had a number of different conversations. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put up some questions for you to think about, and I want you to put your answers in the comment sections, and then we'll have further time to reflect on those questions in our breakout sessions. Today's Lansing People's Assembly is sponsored by our Liberation PAC, One Love Global, and Black Lives Matter Lansing. So again, thank you for joining. And here are those questions, those qualifying questions. How do we keep our youth safe and off of CATA? Did you know about the ARPA vote, and more so even like about ARPA? And we let the mayor and city council know that their votes do not represent the will of the people. And so introduce yourself and begin to reflect on these questions. Again, if you're joining us via Facebook, we want to thank you for joining us. And if you're having any tech issues, please let us know in the comment section, and we'll be glad to serve you. Thank you again. And we're going to go ahead and get started here momentarily as folks. So again, thank you for joining us. And tonight we are going to have some key conversations. We want to hear from you. This is a conversation with community. This is not, you've not been invited to this space that we could talk to you. You've been invited to this space tonight so that we can hear and learn from each other. And the People's Assembly is a space where what we say, the collective, we set the agenda, not the elected. And so again, welcome to the space, Facebook and on Zoom. And if you're on Facebook, if you can jump into this conversation and jump into Zoom, that would be really appreciated. But we want to welcome everyone to the Lansing People's Assembly. We're excited. Have we've got some also introduce Angela Waters Austin, CEO of One Love Global, and Sarah Ghetto, who will be also serving as our team tonight as we work through this assembly. And so if any of my colleagues have something to say, you're always welcome. Angela, welcome tonight, and Sarah, welcome tonight.
Good evening, Mordecai.
Good evening. Good evening. We are back at the Lansing People's Assembly. We've done the Michigan People's Assembly, we've done the National People's Assembly, and here we are here at home. And unfortunately, we have some issues that we need to discuss tonight. And so my internet is a little unstable, but we're going to. For those of y'all that are just joining, here are the questions that we want you to begin to think about, and as we begin our conversation. And so let's talk a little bit about the People's Assembly. Again, the Assembly is a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-ideological, and gendered space. The Assembly brings all the voices together in circular fashion and engages the thinking and experience. We want to synthesize, and we want to have collective agreement, and we want to also follow up with direct action. And so this is a space. And so listen, there are going to be a gang of follow-up and action items So if you're sitting and you're listening to me, please take out your phones. We're going to have QR codes, and we're also going to have links that will be dropped in the chat, dropped in the comment section for you to follow up and be a part of this assembly and the work that is happening on the ground right here. And this role that you can be a part through this discussion tonight, so that you can sign up and be a part of the planning process as we continue to build the Lansing People's Assembly. What's on the plate for tonight, ladies and gentlemen? We have the ARPA vote, and we want to talk about how the Lansing community, once again, this dates all the way back to 2015, the Lansing community deprioritized and defunded. And so we want to lay some context around $57 million that the City of Lansing received. And so that this is what's on the plate tonight, and talk about the possibilities and how can we follow up and what are the direct action. The second thing we're going to talk about is data in and around our youth and how that data has impacted by certain decisions. And so, again, 2015, 2000, black or about, that's troubling on so many different levels. And we know that there are some disagreement with these numbers, but 1 to 2, 3 is one too many. So we want to talk about that and how this discussion is impacted by the Lansing School District's recent decision to drop bus routes for high schoolers and opting to give them a CATA pass to ride the CATA bus. And so we know this isn't the option across the city, across the region. And so how do we keep, our youth safe? So tonight we want to open up with just talking a little bit about healing. We know that our community has been through so much and continuing to go through, all kinds of things. And so one of the things we'd like to offer is a space for healing. And if you're out there and you're listening to me and you want to be of a healing space, there's the link and the QR code is on the screen. We want to provide a safe space for people to come together, share thoughts, experiences, and feelings and needs regarding the violence they've experienced in their communities, neighborhoods, schools, organizations, it doesn't matter. And so we have healing circles. We have circle keepers who've been hold and to make space for us. And so we always want to offer that. So in the beginning of our assembly here, we want to remember those who lost their lives, and we want to remember Patrick Leoya, whose life was taken. There are those in our community and across this nation whose lives were absolutely taken under what we know is state-sanctioned violence. We know that jury selection is scheduled right now for August 30th, 2022. And so we want to remember the Leoya family. And Patrick attended Everett High School for a period and later moved to Grand Rapids. So we're talking about a Lansingite, one of our local youth. And so we want to remember Patrick Leoya. And to give us our grounding and our libation, I'm going to ask one of the oracles. An oracle is an elder in our region who laid the trail and continuing to blaze the trail. And I want to ask Dr. Lee Taylor if she would lead us in a libation as we remember Patrick Leoya and others whose lives were brutally taken this year. Taylor. One second. If you're talking, Dr. Taylor, we can't hear you. 1 second, everyone. All right, Dr. Taylor, are you there? Dr. Taylor is on mute.
Can you hear me?
There you go. We're back. Yeah, please lead us.
Okay, good evening and good afternoon to everyone. We'd like to excite, ignite, and remind individuals of all the things that has happened so that you don't forget. We too easily forget stuff. Patrick was a young man, and when we pour libations in the motherland, they also drink libations. So they pour the libations to remember those who have gone on. And Patrick has become an ancestor in his 20s, an ancestor that you remember that our young people are being taken. All of them are being taken in their teens and in their 20s. When you remove the middle group of young people, that leaves the very young and the very old. Who's to mentor the very young? Who's to assist the very old? So our job is to bring back the memory, mentor the young, and keep in mind that we need justice, and we need economic recognition. We need equitable education and healthcare, and we need to do that with each other to make sure that it goes from the very young to the very old. A young man's life was taken for no apparent cause. Every so many minutes in the United States, a young man's life is taken brutally. Patrick's was one. We give homage to his family. We know they will suffer for a long time. We give memory because we want to keep his name and the names of all of the others like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so on. They did not have to die. And we're just a step away that one of our children could be next. Remember, when you walk outside and see the sunshine, they will never see it again. Remember, when you speak to a neighbor or a loved one, they will never do that again. Remember, when they buy new clothing or get food, they will never have an opportunity to do that again. Or share a hug or a gift with a friend, a neighbor, a relative. They will never do that again. Let us remember people who unjustly died for no reason at all. People whose lives were taken for no apparent reason except to satisfy the negative thoughts and the ugly minds of someone who's going to hell and want to take someone with them. Remember our people, our ancestors, our youth, our ones that have violently lost their lives, silently lost their lives, who may still lose their lives. When I stop speaking, say to yourself, precious Lord, give me strength to do the things I need to do to change this community and change the path of our youth and protect our families as we move forward to progress for a justice and an economic system that is best for all and not just for the minuscule few. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor. We appreciate you tonight. And we're just going to ask everyone to take a moment of silence and say those words within you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. This is a sobering conversation. These are sobering times. And again, we thank you for joining us this evening. If you've not introduced yourself, please do so in the chat. We will have breakout session where you can interact with others and discuss the issues. Tonight, we want to start this discussion off with the ARPA vote. And to kind of ground us in this tonight, we have Tony Willis with LEAP, and I'm going to ask Tony if he would join me in this discussion. As you can see on the screen that's being shared, that the City of Lansing received federal funding to disperse in the community to lift up aspects and parts of the community that were deeply impacted, mostly impacted by COVID-19. And so, Tony, can you kind of give us the background on so that those that are sitting on this Zoom call and joining us by way of live stream can fully understand why this is on the table tonight and the importance of it?
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Mordecai, and thank you all for having me tonight. And Dr. Lee Taylor, that libation starting off was definitely grounding and resonated so well. So thank you for that. Sorry, I'm not having my screen off. I can share it, but I'm at my son's football practice right now. But I want to give a little overview here when it comes to the ARPA fund as a whole. So ARPA was a bill from the CARES relief bill. It got signed into law last year from the president. It was a federal bill. $350 billion went out throughout the nation and through different levels of government. All right, so the states got funding, counties got funding, cities and municipalities received funding as well. And that funding was for those levels of government to react and create solutions from the pandemic and the economic crises that the pandemic created, right? We know life as we know it pretty much changed to a certain degree come March last year, March 2020 in that space. And so everything from revenues were lost for municipalities, for cities, for governments, jobs were lost, lives were lost, the most important thing there, unfortunately. So these funds were designated for communities to react and create programs to help benefit and encourage the economies and their communities out of the crisis. So with that, the City of Lansing received the exact number, I'll say just around 52 million-ish in that space, maybe 49, 52 million, but 50 million is as a general in between there of funding they received, and the money is broken into two tranches. So one tranche came in earlier, and the second tranche, what should be received come this fall between now and October, the second tranche. And the money was broken in half. So 24 million-ish and 24 million-ish for the second tranche. So with that, as I stated, the level of areas, there's pretty much 8 categories where funding could be utilized for small business relief grants, for community aid, for healthcare, for economically distressed communities, workforce development, police, fire, and I might be missing another one, but it's pretty broad in how those funds can be utilized, and a number of communities have used in a lot of ways. So that's kind of just the overview of what happened or what's that place that took place. And then as Mordecai mentioned earlier, there was a vote for the City of Lansing for council about a budget that took place just a couple of weeks ago at the council meeting, maybe the 25th of July, where they adopted and approved a budget for those funds.
Yeah, and so Tony, can you tell us about what the people don't understand for many is that we started last year making presentations to the mayor in and around, community projects that would lift youth up, projects that would, fund economic development and really get at the heart of our community that was deeply impacted. And so there were proposals that were laid out, and in those initial meetings, the mayor indicated that he would talk to his staff, that he would take these proposals. So those proposals were taken and were given a preliminary approval. The mayor submitted his budget, which included many of the community's proposals for youth and economic development and all kinds of different programs, submitted it to the Ways and Means Committee. They countered, and then the mayor countered. Ironically, on the second counter, the final budget approval, most of the community programs were not in that final budget. And this is the vote that we're talking about. And so there were organizations like the Potter Park Zoo. There were all kinds of organizations
Mhm.
that did not get funded. And we're talking like, the Potter Park Zoo only, what they were asking for was less than $200,000, right? And there are a number, Mikey 23 and the Village Lansing, there were just a number of organizations that did not get funded across the city. And so
That's
this is a very big deal. And what they did was they took $1.9 million and left it under the discretion of the mayor, and then said, we want the community to come back for the 1.9, when we've spent a year putting proposals together. So I wanted to give that context as well.
Yeah, you're spot on there. How that took place. There's a number of organizations. LEAP / the Lansing EDC were part of those conversations earlier on. I know, like I said, many organizations, Potter Park Zoo, NAACP, United Way, some owned apartments within the city of Lansing. A number of groups were a part of those conversations earlier on last fall, last winter, right? And so you detail the process spot on. And so where we're at right now, there is a open application submission where funds can be, or where proposals can be submitted for the city of Lansing's ARPA dollars. I'm not sure. I will find that link and I'll post it in the chat here so everybody can see what that looks like and see where that's at. But once again, that's the city of Lansing, not LEAP. That's the city of Lansing in that space, and where they're submitting those or receiving those submissions. As I mentioned, the funds can be utilized in many different ways. There's a few, and I'll submit this in the chat as well, a few different trackers, are like Brookings Institute created a tracker where they took quite the range of communities, both the states, local, and beyond, and see how they're utilizing their funds. You can actually, click on different areas and say, how did, Columbus, Ohio decide to use its ARPA dollars? How did San Antonio, Texas decide to use its ARPA dollars? How much percentage went into government budget filling? Because we know the pandemic took a toll on lots of cities. People weren't commuting, weren't working in cities. So if you were like the city of Lansing or somewhere else, you lost revenue because the people weren't there, right? So that's one part of it. But we also know that violence grew and erupted in some communities as well, right? And so, especially amongst young people. And so you see how some communities put additional programs in place around violence prevention and youth engagement per se, right? How can we empower, engage, and enrich people during this time of fluctuation that the pandemic created? Sorry, you guys might hear some background noise too. I apologize. I'm in the parking lot here. So with that being stated, I'll just put those in the chat momentarily on our next little break in the space here for everybody can check those out. But as Mordecai mentioned, that's the current process we're at. I won't, go more in the politics of that space, but I think where my feelings are in that realm here fully. And I think there's room for us to grow and do better.
Yeah, I mean, you figure 50, like you said, $50 million, somewhere in that area. We did the math, and I want everyone on here to check our math. The budget is online, and we will find that link. You can look at exactly where the money was dispersed, but the majority of the money went to fleet management, fire engines and police cars, and even $2 million to the city's admin software. So what was said to us was that they did not want to lock in guaranteed funds to community organizations. So they said the way we're going to get around locking in. So the fire department got locked in, the police department got locked in, the city of Lansing got locked into those disbursements, right? Those allocations. But the community orgs, there was no will to lock us in. So it said, well, we're going to give the mayor 1.9 and you guys go back and fight over the 1.9. We've already done that. So again, when you think about what other cities have done, put millions up against economic development, millions up against youth engagement, violence prevention, and really building for the future. Like these are finances that we won't see again in this way. So we started crying out for the mayor and the city council and the mayor's cabinet to really prioritize the city of Lansing, and not just the city itself, but the most impacted areas of our community. We started almost a year ago with this conversation. And so I want to take a hard pause here and want to just ask, if are there those on here who have questions? And so Angela, I know you're here. Do you have any thoughts in and around? I know you do. Like, just make space while people are thinking of their questions.
Thank you, Mordecai. I really just want to lift up and express appreciation for folks who have been showing up, excuse me, on the Black Lives Matter page as we have been sharing this information. My apologies, I have allergies. and just want to maybe draw some connections between the lack of investment in our community, the resulting impact on our young people, and also how cities continue to invest in bricks and mortar rather than in people, in things rather than in people. And what I can see from some of the comments is that there's a disconnect that these things are actually related. The conditions of crime, of violence, of neglect are created by budgets that reflect the morality of leadership and the priorities. So I really want to lift that up as we look at this image of how the votes were tallied and who actually stood up for the people, and how important it is for us to understand that long-term defunding of our youth and of our neighborhoods has a predictable outcome that continues to reinforce a system of oppression and state-sanctioned violence. So we have to disrupt that cycle by really connecting the dots and making sure that we are coming together in solidarity, that we are uplifting one another, and that we are being clear that it is the majority of Lansing that desires to have a people's budget.
Angela, I appreciate you bringing that, bringing it out in that way, because oftentimes these discussions happen as if they're not connected. And when we go back to 2015, there was an appeal to the council at that time to invest in the community. And in 2015, the answer was the same. The community got deprioritized. And so we're here tonight saying, what would have happened if council and in 2015 would have prioritized the community and put money into the community? Where would we have been going into COVID? And we can show you the graph and show you what has happened over the last decade or so. And we have to cry out. So I want to make space for those who want to speak. Just come off of mute. And if you have questions, we have those that'll write your questions down. But this is a conversation tonight and a learning session. So I'm going to pause for those who would like to add to this discussion.
So this is Dr. Taylor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you, and you're on camera.
Okay. So I'm looking at a few things. I've been into a battle with the city council and with the representatives. And the moment that I saw the change in the matrix, I also went into a battle with NAACP and the mole that's in there that is behind our backs, stabbing and coordinating with the mayor. The thing is that the 1.9 that they have said is set aside for nonprofit organizations and for minorities to scratch for. You have to fit into about 5 different categories before you are eligible. That's the first thing. And the second thing is everything you do in those categories have to represent or affect or improve something in the city. Part of the money that they took, well, all of the money that they took, that they got it on the basis that they would do an economic change, diversity change in the city, and provide grassroots stuff, which is downright nonprofit organization under a different name. That's how they got as much money as they got, so that they could then use it the way they wanted. So the mayor created another council or organization that is supposed to address grassroots activities. In my mind, grassroots activities are those that actually work in the community and put their hands on something that young people, elderly people, and the citizens need. So when you're talking about a community, you need to identify the community you're talking about. Just saying community, they can show you where they actually do represent and do something for a community. It is not our community. And the reason they don't do something for the community that is affected by nonprofit organization and people of color or minorities is because our community has been divided, broken up. And that began with the I-496 breakup. When they came through, instead of going between Holt and Lansing, they came down the middle of Lansing and broke up the community. And so therefore it moved our people into different areas where we really already had to catch the bus or send the kids on a bus to school, and they could not take much effort into after school programs, and they can't do that now as well either, which is why it's going to be a problem when you get to your other topic, which is busing the kids. So this money that they call themselves setting aside will affect the city treasury. The money that they already let out was not going to affect the city treasury, and that's why they're so liquid with it. What they give us now will be ICE money. ICE money is limited amount of money, and when you use that money, it's melted and goes away to nothing because it's eaten up by inflation. None of the money that they have for us now. Brand New Me Workshop has two other activities underneath there, and that's my workshop, Brand New Me Workshop. Consists of prison outreach program, youth development, and contributions of Americans of African descent, helping our young people get scholarships, awards, and make money while they're in school. The other part of the Brand New Me Workshop is Worship Without Word, the culture of African American and African masquerade dancers. The other part is the Reading Readiness Program, which I introduced to Michigan State University in 1985, where 82 counties put a program together to teach children how early reading and early childhood development. None of the money that they have set aside in their 1.9 in these new programs, we cannot ask for any of those funding to take care of any of those programs that I just named, unless you go for the arts program. And the ceiling on the arts program is as little as $50, and the ceiling is $5,000. Brand New Me Workshop asked for $200,000, and they gave an idea of a possibility of $100,000, and it was wiped away to say you have to fit one of the 5 categories or take out a small business loan. So that's just part of what I know. And the other part of what I know is when they say the rest of us fight over that 1.9, unless you fit into the city neighborhood category, the corridor facade, the human services, the Safe Lansing lead program, down payment on a home, cares homeless. If you don't fit into those programs, you can't even apply for the loans or apply for the grants or work with another NPO for the grant. You're going to be left out anyway. And if you somehow scratch your way into it, instead of hundreds of thousands, you're limited to $200 $500,000, which won't even feed the children that we feed with our reading readiness program. We do 35 children 4 days a week, breakfast and lunch and snacks. And we take them out on field trips, buy them backpacks, put socks and shoes on when we have to. What is $100 or $5,000 going to do in 1 week? I'm just saying, think about it.
Dr. Taylor, that's why we're here to talk about this. Dr. Taylor, can you hear me?
I do. So we actually have to identify
So, I mean,
area for a neighborhood. Because when you say neighborhood, they solicit and section out neighborhoods the way they want to. And where our people live is not that neighborhood. When they come together for the reading readiness program, they come from all over the city. Waverly, Everett, Sexton, Eastern, Christian schools. They come from all those areas. So our neighborhood becomes the location that the young people are meeting in. And then their parents pick them up, or they catch the bus home, or we give them a ride home. We do not have a set neighborhood anymore.
You've heard from the Oracle, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Taylor. I mean, we're continuing to dig deep into this hole. Again, this is systemic. These are systemic inequities and racism and all the stuff that we're talking about. A community cannot save its way out of poverty, and you can't pull yourself up. This in a way is theft. This is highway robbery, to steal from the community. And get away with it. We cannot let this happen without responding. So I want to make room for those who want to that's listening. I want somebody to math 50, let's just say $50 million. You know, what's the percentage? 1.9, right? That shows the level of passion that our elected officials have for our community. One of a few organizations that heard about the meeting last winter and went and made the presentation, and I personally told the mayor of the tale of two Lansings. And we asked the mayor and the cabinet to fund the Lansing that consistently gets defunded and deprioritized. We gave statistics, and we urged the cabinet and the council to fund the other Lansing that consistently gets forgotten. And here we are, after promises were made, and there were organizations that were happy. They put their proposals in. Hey, we're going to be a part of the recovery of COVID recovery. And here we are in August of 2022, right back where we started. Is to pivot to this discussion because it's all connected. I'm going to ask Claretta if she would come introduce herself. We're working with one computer here, so just come sit here. And what's this issue about the buses? So I'm just going to let you take it from here.
Okay. Hi, my name is Claretta Duckett Freeman. Some of you guys might know that I ran for city council at large last year. I'll be running again in 2023. I have 5 kids in the Lansing School District, and 3 of them will attend Eastern High School. So I think I have a little bit of a different opinion than some people do about the busing. But one of the things that struck me was when they privatized the busing in 2015, it's almost like we should have known that we was going to lose even more. Apparently, the reason why they privatized the busing in 2015 is because there was not enough money in the budget for Lansing to continue doing the busing services. So this was back in 2015. And so then when it became privatized, then Dean took it over. I used to work for Dean. I worked for Dean in about 2018, and during that time, they did not have enough bus drivers at that time. As everybody knows, after the pandemic and during the pandemic, we lost even more people in all jobs, but especially in busing because it is extremely hard. When the school district was in charge of busing, people had better pay and better benefits. Once you privatize stuff, a lot of times you lose those things. And so now they're saying they want our kids to. Now, I don't have a problem with my two oldest girls riding CATA. I think that would be great for them. But my son, who has a disability, who's been targeted by the school district over and over again, I don't need him being targeted by the police, which is what's going to happen. At least that's what I foresee happening. If now it has nothing to do with the school district. Now you're talking about the kids are in a public space. So if they get into a fight or an argument or a misunderstanding, they don't have that buffer, that protection of the school. I'm hoping there should, in my opinion, there should be like maybe some type of school person who is on the bus, who's on all the buses, that can protect the kids, that instead of somebody saying, oh, I'm going to call the police, that this person will take concerned on a public bus. He has autism and he doesn't understand all social cues, and he doesn't like to be touched. He doesn't like to be close to people he doesn't know. And I can only imagine all the other kids with their disabilities. And it's not as if they told us that, oh, well, the children who have disabilities, we're not going to put them on the CATA. All the children are going on the CATA, no matter what their emotional capability is to deal with this. And for a lot of adults, it is difficult to ride the CATA. So I get why it happened. The reason it's happened, let's go back to what Dr. Taylor said, is that things are being defunded. And this has been happening over time. It didn't just happen. Like, it didn't just happen this year. It didn't just happen in 2015. And you almost got to look at the state government too. You got to look at the state and the federal. Why aren't the schools being funded enough so that they can have their own busing? That's something we need to question, because then of course when you privatize it, and those people are only paying now they're paying $19. When I was working, they were paying $15 an hour to deal with 65 kids on a bus to go all over Lansing, from the north side to the south side, east side, and the west side. And then you're also supposed to write these children up when they don't behave, and you don't get any training on it. So, who wants to do that and not have benefits and not have full-time hours? So, and then you want to try to have another job, but the way that the hours are set up, what job is going to work with you that you got to go pick kids up in the morning, you got to drop them off home in the afternoon? What job can you get in between those hours? I think my issue with the school district was, I understand they did the best they could with the budget they had, but you still need to communicate with parents. And they could have seen this happening. And I don't know why we had a conversation earlier in the year that they were going to put our children on public transportation. I really wish I could have known something like that, because my son is going to need for his therapist and all these other people to help him do this. And what about other kids? But that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, so this is the discussion tonight. Our community is consistently being defunded and deprioritized, and what are we going to do? We're going to just continue and not say anything, not rise up, not respond. And you being here tonight is the first step in turning the tide. And so again, we want to take a hard pause. I want to appreciate Claretta, Dr. Taylor, and Tony Willis for stepping forward to share and continue to provide context with this. Now, I also want to put in the chat as well that the Lansing School Board and the district received a whopping amount from the ESSER funds, ESSER. So you had ARPA and you had ESSER. And so we know that the district used some of that money to replace air conditions. They raised teacher salaries, right? But there was quite a bit of money that the Lansing School District received from the ESSER funds. It's all coming from the same source. All across the country, school boards received an enormous amount of funding through the ESSER funding. We're going to drop that in the chat as well. Is there anyone else on here who has any questions or comments? Hard pause.
Can I just start? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Clinton Morales. I'm on here as a parent. I'm also on here as a former student of the Lansing School District. And then also for the past about 5 years now, I've been studying environmental sustainability and community development with a minor in human development psychology. So, and all of that really was just a culmination of trying to help out my daughter who I'm also raising in Lansing, and who is part of the Lansing School District. I just want to say I'm really glad that I even got on this chat. I've been looking up a couple of things. I found an article online from April where it's from Center Square, and it discusses about how Lansing's going to use the ARPA funds and what they said they were going to do. And in here, it does talk about the NAACP and other organizations that you got, United Way that you mentioned, that were kind of scrubbed off the budget. And I just thought it was kind of interesting because of the fact that if somebody was looking into this and they found an article and didn't know how to really search it, they could see this and, have misinformation coming their way. The transparency isn't there. We don't know anything. There's not anything even on Google that you could search and try to find. And if you do find something, a news article, because many people just click the first thing on the top of the search engine, they're going to find this. Another thing that I found was that $400,000 was announced for a new graduation coordinator specialist program. $400,000. Ben, the superintendent and Lansing Promise executive, Justin Shaheen, and the superintendent at Lansing School District announced it. It was part of this page. I'm wondering if that went through. And I guess in a way that kind of shows also, if it did go through, where they're allocating their money, where they want to put their money. A new graduation coordinator specialist would help to get their graduation rates up. The graduation rates up means, a better look for them. I'm not sure if it means more funding, but I do know that the amount of students in a school means more funding. Test scores mean more funding. So it very well could be graduation rates also tie into how much funding you get. So again, it kind of reflects where their mentality of where they want to put this money and have the money go to, instead of basically other things that they don't take into account, like Miss Duckett was talking about. Mrs. Duckett, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which one, but what she was talking about, the social aspect. A lot of what I've learned in environmental sustainability and community development, as well as human development psychology, is that we are social creatures. All humans are social creatures before they're academic creatures. We need, as people, to shift our focus from the academics and putting the money and all that type of things into the academics, and really focus, especially in schools, on the social and emotional well-being of children. This whole shift from CATA, taking the money and putting it into everywhere else except for economic development and grassroots program, which was the main focus of their grant, from what Dr. Taylor said, and also things that I've also read and looked up and seen in the time that I've been listening to you guys. I mean, it's just plain to see that the kids are being ignored. And it really falls heavily on kids that are disenfranchised and disadvantaged, not only just in race, but also in class, also in mentality, intelligence. My wife has a father who only learned to speak English at 20 years old after coming from the bottom of Texas. So she had a accent. She's, you know, and she couldn't read very well because he didn't know how to read, and he didn't teach her as a child. So they put her in ESL, English Spanish learning classes. So it's just the attention that needs to be put on the children is not there at the moment. And I think that this CATA bus situation shows it. From my personal experience, that was just from what I've learned. From my personal experience growing up in Lansing, if you go to the CATA station and you see somebody that doesn't like you or you don't like them, there is a very high chance that people are going to start fighting. There's a very high chance that things will turn bad quickly, especially when you're a teenager. Teenagers have the highest rate of crimes committed in the United States. It's not adults. It's not older adults. It's teenagers, because teenagers make many mistakes. They don't have the precognitive functions developed all the way yet. They may act like an adult, but they still in their minds choose to do things as if they're doing it for the first time, which you have no experience behind it. So they're going to make a lot of mistakes. Sending them to this CATA station is giving them the opportunity to increase their crime rate in this city, increase the number of interactions between these children, and then the shooting and the fighting and the increase of that. So it's just going backwards. They're going backwards in what they're supposed to be doing.
So Clinton, think about this, Clinton. We got the number now. The ESSER, ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, and the school board, the district receives $67 million, which breaks down to $6,500 per pupil. So you think about $50 million from the city and $67 from ESSER. This is unprecedented amounts of money. The same message that we gave to the mayor. This is money that we won't see, and this is our time to build, to seed for the future. We needed a different mentality, and what did we get? The same old, same old. And so it's important that everyone on here understand the reason why this is on the plate tonight, because it is affecting us in new ways. And so it's important that we get activated, that we get educated, and we move forward with what's right. This is an issue of justice. And so who else I want to make space for before we go into our breakout session? We've got 3-4 questions. No, thank you, Clinton. I appreciate that. Anyone else? This is an open discussion.
I wanted to, this is Dr. Taylor. And I know we have individual subjects and titles you want to talk to about. And I deal with all of those. One of my major things as a brand new me workshop is prison outreach. And with the prison outreach, I do boys vocation school and Camp Highfield. And then after that, I do the intake in Ionia, where we're talking about our young people that are the ones who get into the fight on the bus, end up in those prison camps. I also do the reading readiness programs, which is part of the after school programs, because they're not going to get what we want to teach them during the proper education. It's an after school thing. We have also, as the Brand New Me workshop, an activity called Snack and Chat, where we bring kids from all the school into an area and we talk about the violence in the school, the fights in the school, what you're going to do when you get on the bus, how you protect yourself, what do you do when somebody bully you. That's a program that we're going to be meeting again on the 23rd of September at Christ Kingdom Builders. This coming Saturday, there will be 35 children that's going to show you what they did all summer long instead of being in the street. They'll be at Christ Kingdom Builders at 2 o'clock. If you have the time, stop by and see. Every one of us on this video here are involved in more than one thing, and everything we're talking about affect our lives at every different direction. So we can't just zero in on one. Again, I say, our community It's what we create. And we have to create a better community by what we do and get our children involved. And because all the kids that we deal with at the Brand New Me workshop, they're autistic, Asperger, homeless, orphans. Some of them are wards of the court. Some of them don't know what they want to be. Those are the ones we deal with, not the ones who people say they're going to be okay. We make them okay. We make them okay. And those of us that's on this video now are the finite few who have the opportunity to make the kids in the different schools okay. We have to go to them. They're not going to come to us.
I want to just say, everything that I'm hearing, you all know how I feel about it. I travel around one of the cities, I won't call the city. They decided they were going to take their ARPA funds and they were going to totally get rid of homelessness in their city. So they started building small modular homes. They said, we can take these funds and do something different. And it is one of the fastest growing cities in America because of the leadership on the council and at the mayoral level. And we can go across this country. There are some very innovative things that are happening whenever you center the community in your decisions. So what we're going to do now, we're going to ask you all to think about these 3 questions, and in your breakout sessions, we're going to send you. You'll see a link, not a link, but an invitation to a breakout on the screen. And so I'm just going to ask everyone if you could just hang out with us for a few, and let's have some discussions. We want to have some solutions, and then when you come back, we'll have a share out from each group. And then what are the next 3 follow-up and action items that we're going to do? If you're on here, text 2 or 3 people and let them know it's not too late to jump into the Lansing People's Assembly. So let's go ahead and get started because we're at the 30-minute mark and we want to make sure we give space to hear from all of the groups. And again, I know that some of the groups designated a speaker, but even if you were in a group and you want to add something, please lift your voice up. So let's start with group number 1. The representative from group number 1, what were some of the highlights from your discussion in your breakout? Anyone?
I don't think we designated a speaker, but I'm seeing now. Can you hear me? Okay. But I was taking notes. A lot of our discussions revolved around, that first question about how we keep the youth safe and off of CATA, or if they're on CATA, how we keep them safe. And we had a lot of questions about how busing through CATA would even look, because, if there's separate routes for students, that's still going to be, during commute times for other community members, that would spread resources thinner, as opposed to having students just on general routes, which has other problems that we thought were pretty serious. And just a need for, community presence even at these bus stops if they're just going to be downtown without school supervision. But anyone else from group 1 can hop in because I know we covered a lot.
Thank you, Aislinn. I just adding that was a real, when it came to answering the question, how do we keep youth safe on and off CATA? I really think CATA needs to assign buses for certain routes that are for the schools only. That's a way. And not have students catching random buses all over routes. I mean, I don't know if there's been any clarification around that, like what routes will be created for the students. And if they are, then they need to be dedicated to only students. So that's one point to be made. And then it was recommended that we have community members act as supervisors, especially at the downtown CATA station. And, just be someone there with extra eyes and ears on the situation to make sure the students are safe. But certainly if I'm an adult trying to get to work downtown, I love the young folks, but that doesn't mean 8 o'clock in the morning, I want to be on a bus with a bunch of high school. So that's disrupting the general public. So I would make it known, if the bus routes aren't dedicated to students only, that could create a real disruption with the rest of the population who need to get places at the same time.
Thank you so much. Anyone else from group one? A lot of clarity, a lot of questions.
Mordecai,
Yes, please.
was also the question of where is our money going to pay for some of these things, because we all pay taxes, and it doesn't make sense if we're going to get a public group to come up with the money when the money is supposed to be in the school district anyway. And so one of the thoughts is that we all need to come together some kind of way to have some input with the city council, the Ways and Means, and other areas to save some of that money that they so-called protected. That's supposed to be diversity, economic, and protection for our youth. Put it where your mouth is. Put the money in the pocket of the people that you're supposed to be keeping safe, and come up with a plan so that we don't have to do it by ourselves. Since you're supposed to be keeping our children safe, you're supposed to be having diversity for our youth. You're supposed to be teaching them about the economics. Get that money out of your pocket, put it where our youth can benefit from it. And so let's get together and start writing notes, letters, so we can get the city council community committees to work with that, because what we write to them, they must act upon. Whether they say yay or nay, but what we write to them, they must act upon.
So you see what's on the screen as part of our call to action and our next steps. Dr. Taylor, I totally agree. We got to have a massive response. We got to write. We have to write. And so please take a picture of your screen right now, to pull out your phone and take a picture of these and the subsequent slides. Group 2.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
Group 2, we specifically discussed the ARPA funds and what their usages are. We talked about how specifically Brian Jackson talked about how, in the plain legal language, how these funds are being misappropriated. You actually can see on one of our BLM Facebook page, you can see the full video of the whole city council meeting and how they voted and what was said the whole time from each council member, how they justified their votes specifically for the ARPA funds. Outside of that, we talked about how there are no bus drivers to actually drive said buses. So what institutions or what things is the Lansing School District giving to parents, right? This announcement was just made 2 weeks ago, but parents are finding out this, but what are the contingency plans next, right? Our question is asking, how should you include the community on this? How can we talk about keeping our families safe? I heard someone mention something about police being on the bus with us. That's not the answer, because that puts our kids in harm's way of the school to prison pipeline and teach them how to come in contact with policing. And we know when policing comes in contact with Black and brown youth, what happens. Outside of that, we also discussed that there were a myriad of different ways that the city could have handled this conversation and who they could have released these funds to, which is specifically people who ask for the funds, who do the community work. So we need to call these things in and hold them responsible. Yeah, so another part that we missed, that we mentioned, thank you, Mordecai, for reminding me about this, talking about how do we show up at the city council meetings, right? So before the city council meeting, we have committee of the whole. And in committee of the whole, we found that a lot of decisions are specifically being made there. So the decisions that are how they are going to work with said funds, what is this fund going to be, who's going to pitch these things, is usually at the committee of the whole. The actual meeting usually goes over decisions that they actually made. So when we look at how do we show up to community things, we need to actually look at how these things work and the most impact that we have. At committee of the whole, you actually do have a chance to actually speak up to anything that's on the actual agenda.
Thank you very much. That's group 2. That's group 2. Group 3. Group 3. Group 4.
Mordecai, I can go for group 3 if anybody else wants to jump in. Yeah, so we did talk about safety for youth. We touched on a lot of points that were already talked about, maybe youth, a route for just students. You know, we did have a lot of questions in regards to how would we know the difference in safety between regular civilians and students riding the bus. We talked about the downtown bus station and safety around that. We did talk about the ARPA funds and that everyone was not familiar with the budget or even knew anything about it. And the ones that did, it was just because of work or the nature of their work. That's how they found out about the funds. We also talked about how we could go to the city council meeting and kind of pack it out like we talked before, that might be a way to help the mayor or the city council understand that, you know, those votes and what they budgeted out was not for the people, and actually tell them the things that we need. One of the people in group 3 was talking about the swim team for the Lansing School District, how none of the pools are up and running. So the students had to go to community centers, and we could have used those funds to get those pools up and running. We have 3 and students can't use any of them. So yeah, that was group 3. We talked about a lot of things, but those were the main key points. So.
We appreciate that discussion. I mean, the solutions are super important. Hearing from community, that's what this space is set aside for us to, you know, to collaborate. And so one of the things we're going to ask, is there anyone else? Like, we don't want to leave anyone out that wants to add to this discussion. And I want to just reference what Claretta said earlier, was that this did not happen overnight. And when we fall asleep and we figure that elected officials have our back, we find out it's the exact opposite. This has started a long time ago, and it's our responsibility at this moment to begin to turn the tide. We got to lift our voices. So what I'm going to ask is that we begin to move in a very strategic, unified way. And I'm going to ask everyone on this call to join the movement to turn Lansing around from the ground up. So if you look at the shared screen, we're going to ask you to reach out, you know, find out what ward that you're in, reach out to your council member and call and express your discontent for the ARPA vote and just everything that has happened in this city, and prepare a written statement. If you've never prepared a written statement, we will respond to you with an email with how to write a written statement and what points to put in that statement. As it was said in one of the other groups, that the actual funds have not actually landed in the city's bank account. So we can still lift our voice. And so we're going to ask, this is the call to action, is that between now and the next council meeting, which is next Monday at 7 p.m., we want to flood these council members and thank the ones who voted against it, who stood up for the community. And even if they're outside of your ward, call them anyway, send them an email. And we're going to ask you to be present during the next city council meeting if you're in town with written statements. Read your written statement and submit it. There's a whole process for that, and we will also respond with an email on how do you do that. The ARPA funds were decided in the Ways and Means Committee. And those that sat on the Ways and Means Committee was Peter Spatterford, Carol Woods, and Patricia Spitzley, council persons. So they sat and they were right at the threshold of justice and did something totally different. We have to hold our elected officials accountable. And so it's very important. You don't see this happening in Okemos, you don't see this in DeWitt, and you don't see this in Hope. The Hope pool is open, and they just put all kinds of money to keep that pool open for those students and to do what they need to do. Why is it any different anywhere else? And so again, this is very important. We're going to ask everyone also to join the Lansing People's Assembly. This is our space to plan, to organize, strategize, and to educate our community. There are various roles that you can play in this space, and a link will be dropped in the comment section for you to identify yourself and to participate. We're going to also ask that you become a Breathe sponsor, and so we'll talk a little bit about that as we end here. But we're working on a Michigan Breathe Act and to address these issues. And so if you're not familiar with the Michigan Breathe Act or the Breathe Act as a whole, we're going to ask you to begin to read about it. We are developing, we're in the process, and we're right on the verge of some great announcements. But what would a Michigan or a Lansing Breathe Act look like? And so you can see it on the screen: divesting from harm, investing in new safety infrastructure, right? And so sign up, become a sponsor. The link is in the comment section. I want to ask Angela if you just give us some context on the Breathe Act, because we've been working really hard on the state level, and we actually started this conversation locally about a year ago. Angela?
Yes, Mordecai. So the Breathe Act is a federal dream of civil rights legislation. It's the Civil Rights Act of our time, and in many ways is the Civil Rights Act that our ancestors deserved and did not get. It is about how we build systems that are designed by and for the people, that are community driven, that dismantle the structures that continue to cause harm, the ways that our youth and our communities are targeted for oppression while defunded across all of the systems of care. So the Breathe Act is about how we reallocate funds into the kind of care that we know our community needs and deserves, and that actually addresses the root causes. We keep throwing money at Band-Aids and temporary fixes that we know don't actually solve problems long-term. And the Breathe Act is policy that works to correct and to rebuild systems and ways that actually protect communities, that make communities safer, and that invest in the kind of healing that communities need from the long-term impacts of a COVID pandemic, of long-term exposure to poverty and crime. So Lansing Breathe Act is our vision for what that looks like for our community. And so we spent months, as Mordecai said, just even having conversations about what does safety look like, because we've been told what it is, but yet it doesn't make us feel safe. So our community spent time really processing what makes communities safe. When you go to a safe community, what does it look like? What does it feel like? And how do we make sure that Lansing and the residents of Lansing have those same investments, have those same resources? Because communities that are the safest actually don't have police on every corner. Communities that are the safest wouldn't tolerate police being on their heels every step and surveilling them and stopping them at random. So we know that what happens in Black and Brown communities is not what happens in other communities. And we deserve the civil rights legislation at every level. So the Michigan Breathe Act is inspired by that broad federal legislation. And the Lansing Breathe Act is really inspired by our people and the priorities that they named during the height of COVID. When we asked communities what they needed, more cars and new buildings for the city was not on that list.
Thank you, Angela. Anyone have any comments? So, like, we've been putting up these codes, these funny little shape squares throughout the entire assembly. Those are QR codes. Most of you all know that. You pull out your phone, turn on your camera. You don't have to take the picture. Just put your camera lens where it focuses on this image, and a yellow link will appear on your screen. You tap that and it'll take you straight to the website where you can sign up to be a sponsor. Anytime you see one of these shapes, just take out your phone and let it focus on the image, and it'll take you direct to the link. So we're going to take a hard pause here and ask those of you all that are here to pull out your phone and become a sponsor for the Michigan Breathe Act. Lost my train of thought. If we don't have, if all of our work does not find its way in policy, then we're always in the streets. And so we have to have systemic transformation, and this is one way that we do it, is through policy. One of the things that I think we'll talk about next time is what would it look like for Lansing to have a charter change, to actually shift the power of government. We are under a strong mayor. We've talked about it. What would it look like to shift the charter and move into a weak mayor, where the power really rests more on the community? And so we're under a strong mayor, so we know what we're dealing with. So the Lansing Breathe Act, Michigan Breathe Act, become a sponsor. Any questions? Comments?
I wanted to just make one more comment. I think that it's important because of everything that we're talking about, especially with the kids in the community. There's this big thing that's being discussed throughout like science and like psychology, but there's this thing called the nature deficit disorder. And what it's basically talking about is how we live in a different time than even what we grew up in, 30 years and up. The electronics and the inaccessibility to nature and to outside and to green spaces has dramatically increased mental illness and other things within children. I just wanted to let you guys know so you can research more about it, especially parents and everybody who's trying to help the children, and so that possibly it could help you in the future as you move forward, and everybody, parents and everybody trying to help these children and help the children, which then in turn help the community with just getting better. So that's it. Thank you.
No, Clinton, thank you for that. And I think that's worthy of us adding to this discussion of environmental justice and the cross-cutting issues. And so thank you for raising
I had
that.
a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is Juliet. I also work with Tony at the Lansing Economic Dairy Park. And something I am curious about is working outside of the system, specifically in a way that, like, how maybe LEAP has limitations in what we can do. So what it would be like to realistically set up a community-driven like rideshare program to help students get to school, and how that can start happening, what it would take to plan that, and if in this meeting that could also start. I guess I just have questions about that because I don't know how to start that.
Yeah, Juliet. So once again, another person that has my number. Yeah, so contact me. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's start talking to parents to figure out how we can build these things out without relying on systems that have not worked for us consistently. Let's find ways to empower the community. So hit me up. You have my information, and I'm gonna inbox you my number.
Cool. Thanks.
So thank you for that. And we're actually your questions, your comments, we're building for the next assembly, which is coming up in September. And maybe we'll add to that the 6 major questions that in order to do what you just laid out, there are 6 fundamental questions that you have to answer in order to bring something like that to fruition. And so we'll put that on the plate for next time as we continue to build. And really what we're talking about is reimagining and reinventing. The answers are in this room. I see someone has their hand up. I think Miss Horn, Anna Maria.
Yes, thank you. In preparation for the August 22nd, I wonder if there was a place inside of the building, or if there was something that could be done for families who have children who would like to attend. If there was like a place to drop the kids off, or even maybe if somebody, or I would be willing to be an adult in the room to watch the kids, if there was a way to secure a space that, parents could drop off kids and then go into the city council meeting. Or if there were pizzas or something that could be even provided for families so they don't have to worry about dinner for that day. And we could have more families and parents that actually have kids in school who are impacted by the current busing situation to be in the building. Do you have any thoughts about that?
We have folks that are sitting right next to me, and they're nodding their head yes, and that's something we can do. Let me put my mute down. Hold on a second.
Yeah, no problem. No problem, Anna Maria. Let's sit down and figure this out. We can figure out childcare, and also like the Capitol steps are right across the street with a big field. We can get toys out there for those kids, and then also we have an office that we can use too, and we can figure stuff out. Once again, you have my number. Text me. Let's sit down and figure it out. Let's figure out a date and time.
I mean, think about if we were able to do what we're talking about, a community ride share, making council meetings available. This is the reason why we have this space, right? Is so that we can bring these ideas out. That would be a solution that would be scalable across this country. We're not the only community that are wrestling with these issues. And so, again, thank you for lifting your voices and asking these questions, right? So what else can you do? We have to join voter registration. We have to make sure that our community, we have folks that are registered, and we have to get out in the streets, and we have to make sure that our folks are registered. So I'm going to ask everyone again, like, respond to the email, respond to the links that are being dropped in the chat. If you like to be a part of our, GOTV and all of our, voting efforts moving into the next election, the general, then please respond, because we're out in the community making sure that we're getting folks signed up to vote. Super important. And so there's also great questions that are going on in the chat. So please take a look at the chat. Pledge to vote. We've asked those that we've talked to many in the community have said, well, I'm not going to vote. And so we've asked them to pick, one or two persons, young persons in the community, and vote for them. Since they cannot vote, you cast your vote for a young person that is not of age to vote. So we want to make sure that we get people signed up to vote, registered to vote, and that we pledge to vote, right? Because nothing is going to change if we keep electing the same officials that continue to perpetuate harm through policy and decisions. You can volunteer, and we'll continue to put these links in the comment section for you to respond to as well. For all of those who would like to be a part of our Black Lives Matter Michigan allyship, we have the link on the screen. You can become a part of our allyship. Very important. Just dropped in the chat as well. And so there are many opportunities to stay in the flow of information and knowledge, but also be activated in the community. And so here's our last ask. We're going to go back to that. Let's prepare to be at the City Council meeting next Monday at 7 p.m. with written statements. You will get a response back from us. Those of you all that registered on, if you're not sure like what to put in it, we got you. So let's prepare to do that. Let's reach out to our council members. And what I'm gonna also ask you to do is to post something on your social media page. Everyone, just take your social media, if it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, I don't care. Post something that you learned in this People's Assembly on your personal Facebook page and make these commitments. And so that's how we're going to impact transformation and change. I'm going to ask if any of my colleagues have any closing statements, or any of the folks from the community. We are at the end of our People's Assembly. The next assembly is September 20th. September 20th, please mark your calendars from 6 to 8. September 20th from 6 to 8 p.m. You can also follow us on Facebook. There's a Lansing People's Assembly Facebook page as well, where we will be posting as well as the links in the comment section. Here are the upcoming city council meetings if you want to put them on your calendar. August 22nd, September 12th, and September 26th. We are going to be a nightmare. We are not going away. We're not going to die out. We're going to stand up for our youth in this community. So I want to thank you for joining us for this important conversation. And I want to thank Dr. Lee Taylor. We so appreciate you. Thank you again, an oracle in this city. You provided so much detail and context for us to really chew on as we continue to organize. I want to thank Claretta for joining us today. Every time I call her name, her phone makes a weird noise, some kind of duck noise, and we're not sure what's going on with that. I want to thank Angela Waters Austin, CEO of One Love Global, and our entire staff, Sarah Ghetto and Tony Willis, and those who joined us. Every one of you all, I want to just applaud you all for prioritizing this community and your time tonight. Thank you again for being with us, and may everyone have a wonderful night.